Marikana miners injured and arrested in the 2012 tragedy are taking President Cyril Ramaphosa and Sibanye Stillwater, formerly known as Lonmin, to court. They are filing a civil claim against them for their role in the tragedy. 34 mine workers were killed in Marikana on the 16th of August 2012 when police opened fire on the striking workers. 78 workers were seriously injured following the open fire assault, while 250 miners were arrested. The strike was over a wage increase. SABC News reporter Nozintombi Miya is tracking that story at the South Gauteng High Court. She joins me now. Very good afternoon to Nozintombi. Just give us an update as to what's happening.
You're so right, Nzinga. You know, we have been tracking the story since early this morning when we obviously knew that the Marikana mine workers, who are obviously launching this case, started their journey from Marikana at 7 o'clock in the morning and in about 3 buses made their way here to the South Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg. So there's been about 200 mine workers that have landed here over the past hour, and obviously they're lending a visual presence outside the South Gauteng High Court to ensure that they get a fair shake in the courts. And we know that while this is happening, there is a concurrent or a parallel situation that's happening with a virtual hearing that is currently ongoing. And just to talk to us a little bit more about some of the outcomes and some of the issues that have come about, we're going to speak to the lawyer for the injured and arrested miners, Mr. Andries Nkome, and he joins me again. Thank you so much, Andries. You know, you have been quite busy from early this morning. And right now, as things stand now, we do know that the lawyers inside court, the virtual court, are still arguing the merits of whether or not Judge Lamont should stay on as a judge, looking at his perceived bias with regards to the shares that he's got. Just talk to me a little bit more about that issue.
You know, we learned only this morning that the judge says he sold his shares, about R250,000 worth of shares in Sibanye yesterday. And we learned the day prior that the judge has got shares. So it was on the basis of that we deem the judge not to be a fit person to hear this matter, because he's got personal interest, and therefore obviously he'll be biased. The instructions that we took, even if he informed our clients or our counsel this morning that he sold his shares yesterday, is to proceed with the application simply because it cannot be that our clients are facing a case against the president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, the government of the republic, one of the biggest mining companies, as well as the judge. So therefore, obviously, the case was not going to be fair in their favor.
You know, there is a concern, however, that if Judge Lamont does stay on in his current position and obviously does render a judgment, the fruits of the labor of that judgment will always be tainted based on his, current, most recent affiliation.
No, I agree. So it's for that reason that we are saying he ought to step aside, and we should be able to find a judge that will look at the emails that were sent by President Cyril Ramaphosa to be incitement. And obviously, for the fact that they had been part owners of the company, there is no way in which he's going to be coming to a conclusion that says what Cyril Ramaphosa did by sending emails was incitement.
Andries, let's just talk about the merits of the case itself. We do know that Zolisi Amakidiwana has approached the court, obviously, to say that this is the redress that he wants. What is the difference between this particular case with the civil claim that the Marikana miners are instituting versus the claim that they had made in the previous years against the police and the state? What's the difference?
We have instituted a civil suit against the government of the Republic of South Africa, as well as against Lonmin and Cyril Ramaphosa in his personal capacity. Now, an apology cannot be ascribed to a different individual. So for the parts of damages which have not been paid by government, or which the government is saying they're not going to be liable for, we expect Cyril Ramaphosa as well as Lonmin to pay for those.
So what exactly are you hoping to get from the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, in his capacity as an individual? Aside from just the apology, are you also looking for monetary compensation, and how much?
Yes, the monetary compensation that we're looking for is just over R1 billion. And the government has not gone to pay so much. So the government is not binding itself to pay the full extent of the damages. So to the extent that there is some damages that are still due, we expect Cyril Ramaphosa as well as Lonmin to pay for those.
Mr. Nkoma, we do know that the current president was not the only chain of command or the line of custody. We do know that he had been a participant because of the email, but ultimately, the call to move from a tactical to a more lethal, or to ascribe the action by the miners as a criminal action and therefore move lethal, had to do specifically with either the Northwest Police Commissioner at the time, who had been Sikiswa Mbombo, the police commissioner at the time, who had been Mamria Piaga, as well as the police chief, Mr. William Mpembe. And we know that between the three of them, with the Marikana Commission hearings and the outcomes of those, they had obviously been held liable and accountable for that. Are these not the people that you should be going directly after materially, as being the people who had so, to a certain extent, pulled the trigger on this, as opposed to the president who, when you look at the chain of events, was quite far removed from the actual outcomes of that particular day? Are you guys not being a bit unfair to the current president?
Cyril Ramaphosa, at the time of the Marikana massacre, held shares within Lonmin. And he held a very senior position within the ruling party. He was an NEC member of the ruling party. So it's for that reason that we argue that the massacre took place as a result of a toxic collusion between state and capital. State in the sense that he was able to influence the machinery of state, and capital in the sense that he sat there as a shareholder of the mine. So he sat in a very individual position that allowed him to do this, to characterize the labor dispute as a criminal act, and to also influence the police to say, go on and treat these people as you would criminals. And we know what happened. People had to be mowed down in cold blood like that.
Speaking about Lonmin specifically, we know that Lonmin itself obviously ran into financial problems and sold the company to Sibanye Stillwater. Is it fair for you as the miner, as the legal representatives representing the miners, is it fair to go after Sibanye Stillwater that inherited the issues that Lonmin, a defunct company, dealt with? Is that fair?
Yes, you'd understand that there was a 179 takeover of Lonmin. So therefore, when Sibanye took over Lonmin, they took Lonmin lock, stock and barrel. They took on everything, liabilities as well as claims that Lonmin has. And for that reason, they stood in the shoes of Lonmin and were proceeding against them.
Finally, Mr. Nkome, what happens now? We do know that the virtual hearing is ongoing. We do know that arguments are continuing. If Judge Lamont refuses to recuse himself or chooses not to recuse himself, what is the way forward? And if he does choose to recuse himself, what is the way forward in either of those two scenarios?
We find ourselves in a very precarious condition simply because we represent close to 300 people that we've got to consult and take the matter forward. And it's for that reason that they decided that for them not to make sure that the matter is stalled, they better avail themselves at court, and we should be able to take instructions easily. Unlike what had to transpire when they said Judge Lamont had to recuse himself. We had to make many calls, and we had to get confirmations from so many people. So it's easier now that people are here. They'll be able to give us instructions, and we'll be able to instruct our councils on the way going forward.
Thank you so much. Andries Nkome, the lawyer for the Marikana miners who are here. I'm just going to ask my camera colleague, Masabata, to just sort of give you a pan, just sort of pan and show you the visuals that we have of the Marikana miners sort of dotted around here, the South Gauteng High Court, waiting to hear the outcomes of the virtual hearing and waiting to give instruction to their legal attorney in terms of what is expected to happen. And next to Andries Nkome, we've got Ms. Nomzamo Zondo, who is from Siri, who we know that Siri itself was representing the widows of the miners, the 34 miners that had died, and they'd done quite a bit of work in ensuring that there was some sort of redress that had happened with for the widows who themselves had been affected as a result of their spouses and loved ones being killed, the 34 miners who had been killed. So And Zinga, as things stand now, we do know that the virtual hearings are continuing, and we do know that the arguments are quite, vociferous in court, with the lawyer representing the miners arguing for Judge Lamont to recuse himself, and obviously the lawyer for President Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as the lawyers for Sibanye Stillwater, which was formerly Lonmin, arguing that Judge Lamont stay on so that the court itself and the court process can continue, so that there can be an easier or faster resolution to this matter. Nzinga.
Nozintombi, Miya coming to us live from Johannesburg.